block.
I don't know how I started.
No.
That's so funny.
I'm not familiar with this. It's kind of you like to start it somewhere.
Yeah.
What is this product?
It's Canva.
Anyone know how to start a presentation in Canva?
Let me see.
Bottom right.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Thanks a village. Hi friends. Where's the clock? It's not here. I was like really ready for the clock. That's fine. Okay.
Do you want a timer?
No.
Yeah.
7:32. Up until 7:47 before we start heckling.
Okay. Heckle away. Hi guys, my name is Dulcinee. I am a conceptual and a performance artist, a filmmaker, and I hope most of you know by now, I am the systems architect for the Banal. Today, I want to talk to you about the impotence of the art object, the Banal, why I call myself a systems architect, and why I think that Bombay Beach itself is a social sculpture. Just out of curiosity, how many of you guys know this man?
For you.
Oh, from me. From me last year. Okay, cool. Solid amount. Some have argued that the three most important artists of the 20th century were Duchamp, Warhol, and Beuys. These are not my tops, but people have said that. Though Beuys is the least famous and least understood out of this trio. Beuys was many things. He was a dreamer, a thinker, a theorist, one of the founders of the Fluxus movement, and chiefly an artist whose primary form of expression was pedagogy. I quote, "To be a teacher is my greatest work of art." You might have heard of his performance art piece titled "I Like America and America Likes Me," in which he lived in a gallery for 3 days with a wild coyote, which is a great metaphor for how I think about my engagement with Bombay Beach.
Who's the wild man?
Yeah, who's the coyote? It's me.
I think you know who the coyote is.
Many who know Beuys are unfamiliar with the little-known fact that he grew up in fascist Germany and was indoctrinated into Nazi youth as a child. This could be the topic of an hour-long lecture alone, so I'm not going to go into it. But if you're curious about that history, I have a fantastic podcast I can give you by artist Joseph Beuys, who argues that Beuys' childhood in Nazi Germany led him to create a utopian and expansive formulation of what art can and should be, chiefly as a way to exercise the fascist within us all. Though at the beginning of his career, Beuys created art objects, such as large sculptures made of fat, by the end of his life, he believed the truest form of his expression was through teaching. Beuys was known for his 10 to 12 hour-long lectures, which were received as works of art. The chalkboards that he drew on during these lectures have been preserved as documentation of these performances, which you can see displayed in museums around the world. You see, as Beuys grew older, he became disillusioned with the art object. He developed a theory of social sculpture, which united his idealistic ideas of a utopian society together with his aesthetic practice. At its core, social sculpture embodies his belief in art's potential to transform society. As a work of art, a social sculpture includes human activity that strives to structure and shape society or the environment. To sum it up, this is Beuys himself. Only on condition of a radical widening of definitions will it be possible for art and activities related to art to provide evidence that art is now the only revolutionary evolutionary power. Only art is capable of dismantling the repressive effects of a senile social system that continues to totter along the death line. To dismantle in order to build a social organism as a work of art. Every human being is an artist, and this is maybe what he's most known for saying. Every human being is an artist who learns to determine the other positions of the total artwork of the future social order. Beuys is one of the only artists I've ever desired to model my career after, and while I pale in comparison, I'd like to trace for you the evolution of my own artistic practice to explain how I got to where I am and why I think the way I do. So my adult creative life began in the visual arts. I made drawings, paintings, video art, photography. I've always been interested in documenting the remnants of capitalism, what industry leaves behind, the objects and environments that have lost their use value. The American West provides rich source material in this respect. This is, of course, how I came to discover Bombay Beach. I define my practice as chiefly being one of translation. I find most of my inspiration from critical theory texts that I take sometimes as direct source material. An example of this is a short film I made titled Suspension, starring Regina, who's here, that was inspired by Baudrillard's book America and Deleuze's essay Desert Islands. But while my early years of making produced many objects, over time, my practice became much less focused on creating discrete works to be consumed, because the older I got, the more alienated I became from the fetishization of the art object and its necessary commodification. And to speak very earnestly, when I was young and when I gained a political education of the world, I really wanted my art to change things in that naive, young sort of way. I wanted art to make a difference, or I wanted to use art to make a difference. As I watched people consume discrete works of art, I felt time and time again disappointed in their lack of reception, their lack of integration. I don't mean to say that people weren't moved by the works or that they didn't like the works. Rather, I wanted the works to spark some kind of action in the viewer, to change the material conditions of their life. Even if they responded, it felt like their responses fell away the moment they stepped away from the work, or a few days thereafter. And this, of course, I saw as a failure. All of these frustrations came to a head in an experiential, durational artwork titled Desert Gathering, which took place over 2 weeks in Joshua Tree. I designed an architecture that brought artists and thinkers together to read texts, perform rituals, engage with our bodies, explore nature, debate politics and philosophy, cook and eat together, fight, cry, argue about the very structure of the experience. I'm sure it sounds quite familiar. And this was my aha moment. The work became this new set of relations that we created together inside this container, however temporary, and all forms of documentation thereafter. I realized that my greatest art practice is to create new structures and systems of social interaction and have that work, that architecture, be the work itself, the immaterial art non-object. In other words, I am a social sculptor, and I want to argue that all of us here engaging in Bombay Beach during this time are also social sculptors. Since that aha moment, I've been developing my own theory of social sculpture as the site where theory and praxis finally meet. As the site where art can actually change the relations between people. As the site where we can exercise the fascist within us, and perhaps the site where art can change the world. Here are some of its tenets, and get ready for some lofty language. 1, we need to construct, inhabit, and embody a social structure whose goal is to create an army of artists. The social sculpture must be grounded in a common oath to face the world together. This social sculpture is an engagement in the practice of world building. It is first and foremost an art project whose medium is reality itself. The social sculpture must be twofold. 1, an alternative to consensual reality, and 2, a think tank who engages with the world outside of its bounds. It must not exist in isolation. It must not be an escapist fantasy for those who are privileged enough to be part of it. The social sculpture must be interdisciplinary, though its mechanisms and logic must be founded in creative, decolonial, anti-fascist, and militant practices. We must recruit people whose expertise lay in different realms and train them to think like artists. We need, and this list is not exhaustive, architects, urban planners, permaculture experts, engineers of the commons, farmers, coders, ecologists, nutritionists, doctors, surgeons and dentists, psychologists and psychiatrists, public health experts, project managers, cooks, organizers and activists, academics, journalists, scientists, marketing and advertising experts, archivists, historians, economists, sustainability experts, statisticians, ex-bureaucrats, ex-spies, ex-CEOs, ex-operatives of the state, those who can care for the elderly and those who can bury the dead. The social sculpture must be physical, tangible, and gesture towards permanence. It must exist both digitally and literally. It must inhabit a territory. Though I do want to understand, with the help of others, what it means to claim ownership over space and over land. We are already living on stolen land. How do we incorporate this anti-colonial notion alongside our claim to inhabit a territory? I actually think it's quite interesting to try and occupy and inhabit a toxic wasteland. We are not expats in Costa Rica. The social sculpture must find strategies and methods to engage with capital and distribute and disseminate it in insurgent ways. The social sculpture must develop a strategic relationship with the state to lengthen its lifespan. The social sculpture must create and disseminate propaganda. The social sculpture must have an outward-facing appearance that does not match its internal structure. The social sculpture must develop a new language and vocabulary whose aim is to destroy the dialectic. We must leave terms like capitalism and communism behind, putting in their place new signifiers that arise from our shared goals of symbiosis, equality, and collectivity. And perhaps you are starting to see how this all comes together in this strange place we find ourselves in. If I could say it in the shortest and least elegant way possible, I would say that what is happening in Bombay Beach and the Salton Sea at large is the most interesting situation I have ever seen in my young life. And the more I learn about the Salton Sea, its mythology, its catastrophe, its lithium, the more obsessed I become. And yes, there are many discrete art objects here in Bombay, and we at the Biennale are in the business of supporting artists make their objects. But my argument is that the Biennale's greatest work is the container in its entirety, a decentralized work of art that we all co-create. Now, the Biennale has been called a festival, a gathering, an event, a season, a movement. I think some of you know our principles, but in case you don't, I'm going to share them here. No tickets, no commerce, no advertising or marketing. The dates are never published publicly. They're only spread by word of mouth. The Bombay Beach Biennale is not a spectator sport. Participation is required. But in a more poetic sense, the Bombay Beach Biennale is a social sculpture, a site for radical reimaginings, a petri dish for politics and play, a stage for trying to break the dialectic, and a toxic wasteland that we are trying to terraform to build the queer future of our dreams. Our language might not be perfect, but you probably get the gist. And so from the outside, it looks like I am just simply an event producer or an arts organizer. But really, in my core, I think of my work inside the Biennale as part of my art practice, and my mediums as systems, social structures, and relations. And here are a few questions that might bring this into clarity. What would it look like for artists to create a town, a government, a municipality, a society? Can we formulate a new theory of occupation as art practice? This year I've been expanding my articulation of what exactly makes Bombay Beach so ripe for this new kind of social sculpture. Chiefly, I made this last year. I'm making a new one, but it's not ready yet. Chiefly, our relationship to public space. The delineation between private and public is very blurred here. During the Biennale, we take over the entire town. It very much is a temporary autonomous zone. Shout out to Aten and Hakim Bey. Our relationship to the state is quite unique. The police operate very differently here, as in they really let us break the rules, and they know it, and it's weird. You can also call Ryan Kelly, the county supervisor, on his cell phone, and he will pick up. That's crazy. I'm not advocating for the state or for the police as positive forces. I'm simply outlining the fact that the contract between government officials and citizens holds a very different quality here than in many other places.
1 minute till heckling.
I love it. I'm so close to being done. It's perfect. And Bombay Beach is a fairly remote place, but it also carries cultural, environmental, and political significance caused by the variety of social movements occurring in the area, the Biennale, Mars, Slab City, to name a few, the devastation of the sea, and of course, the lithium. And I'll end on this hilarious note, which Ivan, I think you will appreciate. I've been formulating the notion that this seasonal engagement with Bombay Beach can be understood somewhat as a LARP, a live action role play. one in which we are all co-creating all the time just by virtue of being here. As it stands, many of us don't live here all year, which is, of course, a fact that's subject to much interpretation and debate. But right now, the influx is such that during one particular time of the year, a myriad number of people from different places, backgrounds, socioeconomic statuses, etc., decide to uproot their normal lives and live in a very, very strange place for a very specific period of time. And, well, make things, experiment, and dream. I'm just going to leave this quote up here. I'm not going to read it because it's too long. I thought I wouldn't make it, but you guys should read it because it's so good. This is one of my favorite quotes. And before I wrap it up, I just want to say if any of this resonates with you, if you're like, what the fuck? I said a lot of things in that, very dense. Please, come talk to me. I'm always looking for people to test these ideas out. And I give a talk during the Banal at 11 p.m. on Saturday, which is a much expanded version of this, and I would love to see all of you there. That's it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Dulcinee. That was great. Now is the time of the evening where we do a few open announcements from ours.